All right, guys, today we're going to talk about specific conquistadors, and we're going to start with the two most infamous. That is Hernan Cortes, who's going to be famous for defeating the Aztec Empire of central Mexico, and Francisco Pizarro, famous for defeating the largest empire in all of the Americas, the Inca Empire on the west coast of South America. So we're going to talk about these conquistadors and maybe a few others. Let's start off with Cortes. Cortes, you think conquistador, you think military man, a soldier at heart. Cortes is a military man, but he starts off kind of as a magistrate, as a legal person. He could have had a future as a lawyer, in fact. And it's those skills that he brings to bear, his cunning and his knowledge of the legal systems in Spain, that are actually going to prove to be invaluable as Cortes takes on the most powerful empire in North America, in Mexico. So quickly on the Aztecs, their central power was based in their capital city of Tenochtitlan, which was right in the heart of Mexico. And today that is the present day city of Mexico City, the capital of the country of Mexico. That's no coincidence. The Aztec Empire, though, is not just the capital city. It's hundreds, over 400 other city-states and tribal areas that the Aztecs had taken over. And that's really important because when Cortes makes land on the east coast of Mexico, he is going to slowly but surely take over and negotiate and ally himself with many of these other kingdoms that the Aztecs had defeated, with the Aztecs' enemies, basically. And that is going to give Cortes a formidable force because he only comes over with about 500 Spaniards in total, a very small number when you factor in how many people the Aztec Empire had. It was huge odds, huge difference there. But Cortes makes that up by using the Aztecs' enemies. And the Aztecs had made many enemies. Remember, their big thing is human sacrifice. They're going around not killing their enemies. Oftentimes, they're capturing for blood sport their defeated enemies and then using them for human sacrifice to their gods. They're on the top of their tall pyramid in Tenochtitlan. So there were many enemies that the Aztecs had made. For Cortes, as a young man, he seeks glory in the New World. He's going to get an encomienda. This was a Spanish plantation, basically, where the crown would allow and the governor would allow a Spaniard, usually of means and wealth, to have a certain number of Native American slaves that they would use to basically farm the plantation for a cash crop. So it's a Spanish plantation. Cortes has one of these on Cuba, and he is also by marriage related to the governor of Cuba, Alvarez, who wants to make a mission over to the mainland, which is where Mexico is, in Central America, and see if there's any more gold to be found. Well, Cortes, his relative, is chosen to lead this mission, but Alvarez gets cold feet right before they take off. He kind of suspects Cortes of maybe not being willing to do this in Alvarez's name, but in Cortes's own name. And he would be totally right. Cortes is totally going to try to get all the wealth and glory for himself, never mind his in-law. So before Alvarez can stop him, Cortes races off with his ships for the Mexican coast. And when he gets there, he doesn't burn his ships like a lot of historians say. He actually dismantles them because he wants to use the parts, and later on that's going to be really important. Recall that Tenochtitlan is a city that's built on top of a lake, Lake Texcoco. And when you're sieging this lake city, you need to have bridges built over the causeways in order to attack it. And so that is where these dismantled ships are actually going to prove really handy. And Cortes does this. He dismantles his ships to basically tell his fellow Spaniards, hey, look, we're either winning or we're dying. There is no going home. So he means business. Another thing, again, using his kind of legal understanding that Cortes does that's really smart, is immediately to give him some standing, he will have his crew elect him as kind of the mayor of a new colony that they established right there on the coast. So now Alvarez has no way of saying he can, command him around, because now Cortes has the same standing as Alvarez. Um, so these maneuverings are just indicative of the kind of cunning that Cortes has. As they're going along, they defeat and they ally with many natives, like I said. One of the most important alliances that Cortes makes when he defeats a small coastal tribe is the gathering of about 20 different slave women that were gifted to the Spaniards. And one of these slave girls was named, well, she'll eventually get the Spanish name La Malinche, or Donna Marina. And she will become Cortez's lover. Yes, is going there. She's going to become the mistress. And they will have one of the first recorded children of mixed heritage, a mestizo child of Spanish and native heritage named Martin Cortes. But aside from that significance, La Malinche also is very important because she becomes the main translator for Cortes, allowing him to negotiate and ally himself with all these Aztec enemies. She also is pretty intelligent herself, and it's reported that on dozens of occasions she was there to forewarn Cortes and his men of treachery and plots against them. So La Malinche has a very complicated legacy in Mexico today. There are many that see her as a traitor. She betrayed her own people. Then again, she was sold as a slave by her tribe. And then there's also the fact that many see her as kind of one of the mothers of the country of modern day Mexico, because she was the mother of the first mestizo child. So that's La Malinche. Cortes, as he's going along, this is 1519 to 1521, they finally make it to Tenochtitlan, and they have an encounter with Montezuma. Montezuma is going to be the last Aztec emperor. It's Montezuma II, the uncle of the previous one. And Montezuma at first is greeting the Spaniards pretty reasonably and everything else, but very quickly Cortes captures Montezuma and is going to hold the emperor hostage, basically, in his own palace in the capital. And of course, the Spaniards are very impressed with Tenochtitlan. There's all this gold, there's these ball courts, gardens, the chinapas, these floating islands for agriculture, and of course the pyramids. This is an amazing city that Cortes does not want to lay waste to. He wants to save the city, so he's holding the Emperor Montezuma hostage. And when he gets word, this is for several months this goes on, while he's trying to negotiate the takeover as peacefully as possible for the times. But he gets word that Alvarez is out to get him, that he's forming a mission to recall Cortes, and that's going to be really bad for Cortes. So he takes half of his men and he goes to the coast to encounter Alvarez and stop him. The men that are left behind, without Cortes there, it kind of falls apart, and here's where the accounts get kind of dubious, but the Spaniards say that the crowds were getting extremely restless, so they forced Montezuma to go out and calm the crowds, and the Aztecs basically kill their own emperor. Of course, other accounts say the Spaniards killed Montezuma. But Montezuma dies, and this is the night of sorrows for the Spanish, when the Spaniards that were left in the capital, they flee. Many of them reportedly drowning as they're going through the causeways of Lake Texcoco to escape, because they were weighted down by so much gold and riches they were trying to carry out of there. Now, this is a pretty devastating defeat, and most people would probably be done at this point. But Cortes, he silences Alvarez, and then he's going to turn around. He's going to regroup with one of the Aztecs' biggest enemies, the Tlaxcalan people. And then he's going to launch a massive invasion, like I said, using those dismantled ships to build bridges to launch this invasion. Thousands and thousands of Aztec enemies join the Spaniards as they do this. The Aztecs are holed up in their city, starving to death, but they fight very bravely, and the siege lasts a long time. So finally, the end of 1521, the Aztecs are defeated, and Cortes emerges as the leader of this new colony for Spain, which will become New Spain. It will reach all the way from South America, Central America, all the way up to this American Southwest. And Cortes will be in charge of the area there in central Mexico. So that is the defeat of the Aztec Empire, 1519 to 1521. Francisco Pizarro. He was not born as rich or even as middle class as Cortes had been, with that legal career and learning and college and all that. Pizarro had actually been a swineherder as a young man, and he journeys to the New World in search of riches and glory, like all the others. And he's actually part of the mission of Vasco Nunez de Balboa, that in 1513 is going to go across the Isthmus of Panama to be the first Europeans to discover the Pacific Ocean, to see the Pacific Ocean from the New World. And then shortly thereafter, in the next couple of years, Francisco Pizarro betrays Balboa in kind of a takeover move of one of Balboa's enemies, and helps to capture and lead to the execution of Vasco Nunez de Balboa. There's a lot of treachery with these conquistadors, and Pizarro is probably the most infamous. His whole life is defined by violence and bloodshed and assassinations. So that's one of the first notable ones there. So they've discovered the Pacific Ocean, and this is the route that Pizarro is going to take. This is about 10 years after Cortes has defeated the Aztecs. Pizarro is going to launch this mission. He has even less men than Cortes had. He only has like 180 Spaniards that he takes with him. They go from the west coast of Panama, the Pacific Ocean. They sail down the west coast of South America all the way to where modern day Peru is, which they will be the ones to found. And they get up into the Andes Mountains, searching for the Incan Empire, which they've heard of because it was so vast and so rich. The Inca Empire, like I said, has 12 million people. It is enormous. It's the biggest empire in all of the Americas. Unparalleled amounts of gold and especially silver. And so Pizarro has his eye on the prize. They eventually encounter the Incan emperor, Atahualpa. And a quick thing you need to know is that Atahualpa has just defeated his half-brother in the Inca's civil war. They'd been fighting the civil war for years, and it had been extremely costly, a lot of bloodshed. Another thing that's going to weaken the Incan Empire before Pizarro shows up was disease. That also factored into Cortez's defeat of the Aztecs. Smallpox especially ravages the population, weakening them. And so Pizarro has these major advantages, but still, I mean, he's got less than 200 Spaniards against millions of Incas. How does he do this thing? Well, basically, he has a meeting with Atahualpa where they're being friendly, and he's playing on a guise of, oh, we're gonna, do diplomacy and whatnot. And Pizarro sends out a priest to Atahualpa. The priest basically demands, and of course, Atahualpa has no idea what the priest is saying, no idea what he means or any of this, but the priest demands that the Incan Emperor convert to Christianity and renounce his pagan beliefs. Atahualpa looks at the Bible that is handed to him by the priest and, thumbs through it and has no idea what it is or what it's about. The Incan Empire had no written language. And he tosses the Bible onto the ground. And that is the justification that Pizarro uses to basically say, okay, these heathens are ours. And he launches a surprise attack using cannons and muskets and all kinds of things that the Incan had never seen before, as well as a cavalry charge on horseback. And again, they'd never seen horses. And so again, these reports are by the Spaniards, so it's exaggerated, but it's reported that in this skirmish, the surprise attack, when the Spaniards capture Atahualpa, thousands of Incan warriors were killed, and the Spanish suffered hardly no defeats. And their armor also would probably prove pretty effective. So now Atahualpa is in the same position that Montezuma had been in. He's a captive, and